welcome back to another video. I'm Olga, and this is a little series where I'm making a DAL cosplay. DAL, if you are unsure, is the Dodo Airlines from Animal Crossing New Horizons, possibly other new Animal Crossings, but I haven't played them. I have explained a little bit more in depth in the first video of this series what my inspiration was and kind of like where I'm going with this. So if you want to go ahead and watch that, I will leave all of those videos linked below. I will also add a playlist to my channel so that you can watch them all in order really easily. So today's episode, we're making the skirt, the final version of the skirt. We've made the toile. I've learned a little bit, quite a bit from my mistakes. I feel like I'm still gonna make some mistakes because obviously I'm going to be changing things and I haven't tested those things yet. So I'm just jumping in. The fabric we're using today, which is so pretty and so perfect for this, like, right? This is the Minerva range 100% cotton drill in the color turquoise. They have a bunch of different colors too, so if you wanna have a look, if you're looking for something else, like not for this cosplay or like something different. This has a very similar texture to denim. So drill is a really similar weave to twill, which is how the same weave as denim. So denim is twill. So it has a very similar like feel and very similar texture and very similar, obviously it's similar weave. However, it's much more light. Obviously, it's a little bit thinner. It's easier to work with because obviously it's not quite so thick. It's going to be really easy to work with, I'm sure. So it has a really nice feel, but it still has that like crispness of cotton and irons really well. It's really gonna hold structure really well. I do have to disclose that this was sent to me for free by Minerva as part of their Minerva Brand Ambassador program. I got this for free in exchange for a post about this skirt. So you can go and check that out if you want to. I will leave it linked below. You can also like follow me and all that. Really funnily enough, this was really serendipitous because the fabric for the skirt, I couldn't find the right fabric. Like I had a very specific idea in mind. I knew I wanted box pleats and I knew I wanted something that would hold those box pleats really crisply, but I couldn't find that fabric in the right color. It was really difficult. I kept looking and looking and looking, and then one day I stumbled upon this on Minerva.com, and I was like, okay, that's the one. So I put it in my wish list, and I was like, okay, whenever I have a break from work and like all of these projects, I'm gonna get to it and order some so that I can make this cosplay and finally get to this. And they sent me like, oh, here's like the choice of fabrics that you have this month, and it was there. And I was like, oh my god, can you believe this? I'm so excited. Okay, so first things first, I'm just laying out my fabric on my desk, and I am pulling out my notes from this make. So from when I originally made the pattern, or self-drafted, I guess. So I'm looking at what I did, kind of the notes I took, the measurements and all of this. And I am trying to like think of a plan, I guess. And the plan is basically to cut out the panels the same as I did for the original or the mock-up. And I am going to tweak the waistband a little bit, but I will get to that in a minute. But so yeah, first I'm gonna cut out my a length of fabric that is 60 centimeters. So I'm just measuring out 60 centimeters along the width of my fabric, and I'm gonna cut out a panel that is the width of the fabric in this length, and I'm gonna start working on those pleats. I'm going to leave one of the panels that I just cut whole, and that's going to be for the front, and then for the back I'm going to cut a panel in half. So that's why I cut 2 panels of that 60 centimeters in the whole width of the fabric. And now I'm going to pull out my pattern pieces for the pockets as well as the waistbands, and my plan with this is to reduce the waistband, but then I realized that actually for the back I quite like to keep some of that overlap because I want to add a button to the back of the skirt. Instead of having my zipper go all the way from, you know, the middle, the center seam, all the way up to the waistband, I wanted to stop at the waistband, and then I want to have a little button there. I feel like that's a very typical vintage thing to add, like a button or a hook and eye. So that's what I'm doing. So I had to pull out my notes and do some math for my waistband, but the idea originally was for me to just cut it off of the pattern pieces. But then I thought, you know what, let's just make new pattern pieces, and then I can still refer back to these if I need to. So I folded the amount that I needed to take off, and this is the point where you can see me thinking, oh, wait a minute, what if? So I did some overlapping, I did the math for that. So essentially I removed less so that I could have one that would overlap and one that would be like smaller, the size that I needed it to be. So for the back, there's two different waistbands, one that is bigger and one that is smaller, so that you have that overlap, and then you have the front waistband, which is cut on the fold, and that I removed some centimeters from. I don't remember how much. I think overall it was supposed to be like 10 centimeters, but don't quote me on that, because obviously it'll be to your measurements if you're making this, so it'll be different. So yeah, I cut this out and cut out of paper, and then cut it out of the fabric, and also interfaced one of each of the pattern of the waistband pieces. I do have to say that at some point all of this mathing didn't really math, because I did something wrong. I think that I just watching this footage back, I think I removed more length or more sizing or more like centimeters, doesn't matter, from the front than I did from the back, because I ended up having the center or the side seam ended up being a little bit forward more than I would want it to be. So not at my true kind of, like, if my body had a side seam, it doesn't match up with the side seam of the skirt. It's not really that noticeable. It's more so when I put my hands in my pockets, so because obviously the pockets are at the side seams. But it's not really something that bothers me all that much, but it's something that if I were to make this again, or when I make this again, I would like to rectify. So for the pleats, you watched me make pleats in my last video, obviously for the mock-up for this, but let's do it again. So I'm using my trusty little ruler for patchworking and quilting or whatever. These are very handy. So I'm making I'm drawing a line at every 2.5 and every 2.5 centimeters, which is 1 inch. And then I'm actually drawing the line all along the length of the fabric, which is not something that I did in the last episode, or the last in the mock-up. So I'm really taking my time, making sure that I am doing everything like exactly how I'm supposed to be doing, and like fixing the mistakes, I guess, or the things that I wish I'd done more perfectly last time. So I'm definitely taking my time and drawing all through the length of the fabric. I started using one of these heat erasable pens, but then I actually switched over to chalk, as you can see here, because I thought it's so much easier to mark. So yeah, I was drawing the lines, and then I would have to, get up and sharpen my chalk, and then draw more lines, etc. I then switched over to this, to my seam gauge, just to make it a bit easier, because this ruler is a little bit faded, so it's hard to see the 2.5 line. And then I would crease with my fingers, sort of finger pressing this, and pin all down the length of the fabric. And I feel like once I got into this groove of like figuring out what the tools I wanted to use for this were, so like the chalk and the seam gauge and all that, it kind of started going a little bit faster, and I feel like definitely the second panel went a lot faster than the first one. But it took me like maybe an hour or so to do all this, to do each panel, I think. But I can't remember. I didn't really count how many hours it took me, but I think probably an hour would be a good estimate. So once I'd done all of the pleating by hand, marked it and pinned it, I went ahead, removed the pins, and pressed that really nicely
Took my time, used a lot of steam. This fabric presses beautifully. It's so crisp. It's so easy to press. So it really, you can tell already the pleats are beautiful. So it really, this fabric really helped this step be so much easier. So yeah, just take your time. Obviously, if you're using a proper ironing board and not like a tabletop one like I am for this video, it probably would have been a lot easier. But definitely the pressing, I think this stage and pressing the pleats all the way through the length of the fabric was a really important part of the result. I think the difference in result from this this skirt to the mock-up.
So I just realized that I forgot to film a bunch of what I've been doing. I have all of my waistband pieces pressed, cut. I've already interfaced the facing. I also have all of my pieces like pleated and nice and all of that. I'm really happy with the result with that. I have 2 different sizes of back facing back waistband because I want to add a little button. I used the smallest one, which is just a little rectangle, and I put it up against my panel to, when it was all pleated up, to kind of gauge how big I needed it to be. I marked that and then cut off the excess all along the panel, all down the panel, using my selvaged edge for where I'm going to apply the zipper, and that means that I don't have to finish this edge, which is great. And the other really nice thing is my pocket is going to be hidden right where that pleat is. The pleat ends there. Wait, I don't know if you can see that. The pleat ends there. It's actually more like 1/2 centimeter, which means that my pocket is going to be really nicely tucked in, and it's gonna look like, when I put my hand in my pocket, it's gonna look like it goes into the pleat, which I think is kind of cool and satisfying for me. I actually took the time yesterday to baste all of these across the top, and then I actually thought that maybe I wanted to stitch the pleat to itself, like stitch this closed, but I haven't quite decided on that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. I think it looks cool, but I also really like how it looks like this. I don't know. We'll see. But I had thought of that, so I was trying it out and I had to remove the basting stitches. And then anyway, I decided to level out the top because it did come out a little wonky. So I leveled it so my basting has just, you know, disappeared into the ether. It's fine. So I've gone ahead and put some little magic clips up there, so just so I don't kind of lose the pleats. And this is more just as a reminder to myself of like where the pleats are meant to go in case I do press something, and then I can just like press it back. So yeah, that's what is happening. I've got the back panel done. I've got both back panels prepped, so like ready to stitch the pocket in. And actually, yeah, I also did the same for the front, but obviously instead of using the waistband, the like back waistband, I used the front waistband and kind of zhuzhed it on here and saw, because obviously this panel was a little bit bigger. I cut about like so. Let me show you. I cut off this much from, so this is, there's a pleat there. So I cut off this much from each back panel. I have 2 of these now. And I then cut off this much from the front panel plus a little bit on the other side because I wanted to keep the whole theme of having the waistband and at the very edge of the pleats so that I have like my pockets right like hidden in behind the pleats. So I had to like kind of move it this way and that way and kind of figure out where the best placement was going to be. So yeah, now I've cut that off and now I can use that little bit of extra fabric for something else that I have planned. And again, for the front, I did the same thing with the pins and the clips and all that. So yeah, now I'm going to stitch these pockets in and do that whole thing.
So to stitch the pockets in, I am just stitching them with right sides together to their correct place, I guess. Stitching all the way down, and then I'm gonna serge this seam and on all of the pieces and finish it that way. Then I'm going to press the seam allowance towards the pocket so that I can understitch the pocket in place. And then we'll press it again right to the inside so that it sits nicely. And then for some reason I stitched the waistbands, put the waistbands together, the facing and the outer. I'm not sure why I did it at this point, but I did it. I don't know. Then I'm actually putting the skirt together at the side seams, and I'm stitching together the pockets, or pinning together. I like to find where those seams are, where you did your understitching and whatnot. And I like those to meet so that everything is really nice and straight. So yeah, I pin all around the pocket, but I only stitch from the sort of sides down. I don't stitch the top kind of waistband edge. And then I continue stitching all around the edge, or like the side seams of the skirt from finishing the pocket. And then I went ahead and pressed those seams open. And next is the part where I struggle to find a good match with the zipper, because I went all the way ahead to the fabric store to find the perfect match of thread, but I forgot to get a zipper. I have all of these different blues. Some of them were too small, and then I kind of just decided to go with a like baby blue kind of zipper. It doesn't really match at all, but I was hoping that I would do a good job with the invisible zipper and that you wouldn't be able to see it that much. You can still see it a little bit, but it's okay. And I was trying a hack that I saw on TikTok, which is where you press your invisible zipper so that it's a little bit more flat and not so curly. And you press that, and then you stitch it in with your invisible zipper foot, obviously. And that gives you a much better result because it's easier to get to really stitch close to the zipper tape, or to the, yeah. So it works a little bit. I think I wasn't using I think I was using a regular zipper foot and not the invisible zipper foot, or something along those lines. But I definitely since have done more zippers like this with the right foot and have gotten really, really good results. So I definitely feel like I finally cracked the invisible zipper situation. But this one was better than some ones I've done before, definitely, but it still wasn't perfect. But yeah, there's a really good one coming soon to the channel. So once the zipper was in, I think I stitched it wrong like 3 different times in 3 different ways, which was I think a new record for me. But yeah, once it was in, I closed the center seam of the skirt, center back seam, and kind of stitched all the way up to the zipper. And then I also trimmed the zipper to the size that I wanted, and I heat sealed it. So I just took a lighter to it and melted the edge off, basically. So yeah, then I went ahead and added my waistband to the skirt. For some reason, I had it all unpleated here. So yeah, I went ahead and pleated it all back up, probably because it was easier to work with if it wasn't super... Oh, I know what it was. So I had it pleated up like you saw in the clip before, and I had the little magic clips, but they kept banging on everything, and I was getting very, very annoyed at the sound. So I ended up just removing them because I was just getting very, very angry at that noise. Yeah, so it's so weird. Anyway, so yeah, I pinned that all in place. I made sure to really pin every single pleat in place so that I wouldn't be sewing it wrong or like in the wrong direction and things like that. So yeah, I took a lot of time doing this, and then also pinned the pockets in place, or the bit where they go into the waistband. And I've said this before, this is my favorite way of making pockets, just because it means that the weight of the whatever you put in your pocket, normally phones, you know, that are quite heavy nowadays, the weight of that will be more evenly distributed throughout the garment, and there won't be as much like snagging and pulling on the side seam. And that just means that not only is your pocket more durable, but it also is, I find, more comfortable for things to be in my pocket. And generally, when you look at the lines of your clothes, at the lines of the garments, they're not going to be distorted when you have things in your pocket versus when you don't. So yeah, we're just gonna stitch that down in place. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of machine ASMR. And I'm sure you noticed at the start of the waistband there was a little bit of extra fabric, and that's for the overlap for the button or the hook and eye. I think I did a hook and eye, but I since have thought that I want to do a button instead, but I don't think I've actually gone ahead and changed the hook and eye to a button. Then I used my regular scissors to trim the top of the zipper and kind of heat seal it. And then I used my pinking shears to trim the excess of this seam. So the seam allowance of the seam allowance of the waistband. I didn't really want to go ahead and finish this on the serger, just I thought it'd be a little bit faster to do it this way. I don't know if it was faster, but I saved a bit of thread, I guess. Then obviously we're going to press the seam allowance of that waistband up into the waistband. And then we're going to press up the seam allowance of one of the long edges of the other waistband of the facing. And so I just use my seam gauge to kind of look at how much it is. It's 1.5. I'm pretty good at seeing how much 1.5 centimeters is, like folding that much without measuring, but I still always like to double check. And we're pressing that over because we're going to stitch this with right sides together through the waistband, and we're going to be stitching the unpressed edge to the waistband. And so when we actually fold this waistband facing to the inside, this folded edge will be ready to be slip stitched into place, and it'll just be way easier to finish. So I do stitch that down starting at the side and then move up into the actual waistband long edge. So I do the short edges and the long edge around, and then once I've stitched it all around, I like to cut off the excess, especially around the corners, like trim those corners. And then I turn this to the inside, or turn it right side out, I guess, and press that really neatly in place. Once you've pressed it all and pinned it in place, I like to go ahead and slip stitch that closed by hand. And although I really like the finish of a hand finished, I guess, waistband, I thought that this fabric and this cosplay needed a more utilitarian feel, because obviously this is a uniform, so it wouldn't be supposedly done by hand, or like minimally so, I guess. So I did add some top stitching as a purely decorative effect. I feel like it really added something to this skirt, and I thought that in the sense of a cosplay, you would see a lot more top stitching and things like that in or machine stitching in a uniform. So that's kind of what I was thinking. At this point, all I had left to do was to even out my hem and finish it. So I first trimmed it to the right size, make sure that it was really nice and even, and then I went ahead and just ran it through my serger really quickly, so that it would all be nice and finished and there wouldn't be like any kind of fraying or anything like that. And then I did a really simple narrow hem, so I folded the fabric twice. So you fold once at the seam allowances, which is however much you added to it, and then you fold the raw edge, or in this case the serged edge, in on that first fold. So you basically fold it twice, and yeah, so I just pinned that in place, and then I'm just gonna run it through the machine and call it a day. Oh, and last but not least, I'm adding my hook and eye here. I'm using the hemline like silver hook and eye closures.
How great is this? This fabric sews like butter. It's so nice to work with. I really enjoyed it, and I have a little bit left over that I'm thinking would make some accessories. But I'm really happy with how this came out. I love this skirt. It's really comfortable. The pockets are so great. And obviously it has a couple of flaws. Considering that I'm not a pattern drafter, this is like maybe the second or third time that I've like drafted something from scratch. I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm really happy with the result, and I hope you're enjoying the series so far and you're looking forward to the final episode. If you do follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen like a few of these photos already. So yeah, if you want to keep up with that, then you can follow me on Instagram. I'm gonna leave everything linked below. You can also follow me on Minerva.com. The other place you can follow me is TikTok, I guess. I'm trying to be on there, but I don't really understand how it works, but I'm trying. So if you want to like follow me on there, then I guess you can do that. Oh, and obviously subscribe. God, I'm so good at this. Obviously subscribe if you want to, if you think that you'd like to hang out with me more, or like you'd like to see other things that I'm making, then yeah, you can subscribe to my channel too. That'd be nice. And like this video if you like this video, I guess. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.